Hey everyone, Shawn Clement here, Wisdom in Golf, and I have a treat for all of us. I'd like to present Dr. Nilank Jha, who is a neuroscientist or a neurosurgeon here in the city of Toronto. And you know, we were introduced by a mutual student of mine and a mutual friend of his. And hey, I'd like to
Sure.
have a go at our future students here.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here, Shawn, and thanks for introducing me. You know, when I met Shawn, I was just so impressed with your understanding of neuroanatomy, biomechanics, the way the spine works. In addition to that, the way that you teach and you implement the cognitive psychology, which I think is so important to the golf game. And I was waiting for you one day for about a half an hour and just watching you help a few students, and I could not believe the science that you were implementing in the way that you teach. And to me, this is the future of golf.
I mean, and in the last 10 years, I've been diving really heavily into your department, and that's why I'm so excited about our association. And the keen interest that you have is in the behavior of the golfer in his decision making on how he picks his shots on the golf course.
Absolutely. I think you're an absolute expert in the swing itself.
Yeah, in the execution part.
Right, and I think that's half the equation.
Absolutely.
And I think the other half of the equation, if we look at the work of Daniel Kahneman and Tversky Nobel Prize winners in thinking fast and slow, cognitively we have two ways of thinking, system one and system two.
Yep.
So system one, which is, you know, subconscious, intuitive.
Yes.
You know.
You were telling me very much like Sully landing his plane on the Hudson River.
Exactly.
That's a system one.
Right, and it's based on a treasure trove of experience.
There it is, yes.
And despite numerous investigations, he was still much more efficient at making that decision at that moment than any type of simulator could. The system two type thinking is more of a deliberate, conscious type of thinking where we take our time. And watching you and my thoughts on the golf industry is that we need to switch things around. Historically, we've been focusing on the technicality of the golf swing and turning the golf swing itself into a deliberate system two thinking. Right. How often have we heard an amateur golfer say, well, I have to keep my elbow here, I got to turn at this point. Whereas when it comes to the actual strategy of execution, well, I think I'll just hit a 7-iron here, or I think I'm just going to hit it over there. And that's where we can benefit from implementing system two thinking with statistics, probabilities, and analytics.
So that way, number one, once the golfer has made the decision, which that's your forte, then the execution comes in a lot easier. Because if you're in doubt as to what target you're going to use, then you really can't set up because you got no solid target to go into. And if you haven't made the right decision, right? That we were talking about, you know, Ben Hogan only hit 6 shots to his personal satisfaction in a round of golf. You're talking about 18%, you know, benchmark rate.
Right.
And we were talking about how amateurs are looking for their benchmark on every shot.
Yeah, I mean, if you take, for example, Tiger Woods in the 2000 Canadian Open, 218 yards from the pin in a fairway bunker, takes a 6-iron over the water, lands it near the pin, and is left 18 feet for a putt.
Right.
Now, we're talking about the #1 player in the world at the time, potentially the greatest of all time. He has the ability to do that.
And he has that wealth of experience.
Correct.
To be able to say, I got this.
Right. But how often have we seen an amateur golfer on the weekend attempt to make a similar shot?
Exactly.
And you know, when we watch golf every day, we can see the make percentage on a putt is 20%, but we're not calculating the make percentage on every shot we make. How are we changing the probability of the hole? What do the analytics tell us? And I think that's where we need to change. If you look at Billy Casper from 1959 in the US Open.
I love that story.
Yeah, he decided going into the US Open on the par 3 216-yard hole, I'm going to lay up every single day in the left rough.
And he was able to get up and down easily from there. He knew he can get up and down, and he had the highest probability of lowest score on that hole.
Right.
He figured that one out.
He figured that one out. He parred the hole all 4 days, won the tournament by 1 stroke. laid up in the left rough, up and down percentage on that hole 100%.
Yeah.
He knew that his probability of saving par was best from there, whereas his competitors that were looking to win the tournament were making bogeys and double bogeys on that same hole because of the hazards surrounding the green.
Exactly.
Now, some people, when you're a weekend golfer and you lay up on a par 3, they'll say, Neelonk, where's your skirt? But you know what Billy Casper could say?
Yes.
Wear that skirt to the U.S. Open Gala in
I
1959.
got the trophy. That's right, exactly. I got the trophy to go with that skirt, exactly.
And if he can make a decision at that level and see those kind of results.
That to me is much more courageous.
Absolutely. I mean, let's take another example of courage. Look at Dustin Johnson at the Northern Trust Open in 2017 with Jordan Spieth. Dustin Johnson was 5 strokes behind in the final round.
Yep.
Comes back into the final hole, the 18th hole, 72nd hole of the tournament, tied with Spieth. Spieth hits his drive in the middle of the fairway.
Yeah.
Dustin Johnson, because of the wind, avoids the water, ends up in the right nasty rough on a side hill lie. This is the #1 player in the world.
Yep.
He decides to pop it out back on the fairway, lay it up, and go for an up and down.
Yeah.
And he saved par. Spieth made par, and they tied that hole, and they go into a playoff hole.
Yeah.
Now, the wind changes directions, and Dustin Johnson decides to go right over the water, 344-yard drive, carried the ball over 300 yards.
Yeah.
They asked him after, Dustin Johnson, how'd you decide to go over the water? Well, cover was 300, that's no problem.
That's it.
He's left 94 yards to the pin, whereas Jordan Spieth has left 174 yards, hits a lob wedge to 4 feet, makes the birdie putt, and wins the tournament.
Yeah.
Now, Shawn, what everybody focuses on is that 344-yard drive, that lob wedge. What we're forgetting is, think about all the decisions that went in on the final hole in regulation and on the playoff hole for Dustin Johnson to win. And if we can translate that decision making to the amateur golfer, we can lower a handicap without even one thought of a technical swing by 4 or 5 strokes around.
We can definitely make much better players, much better decision makers, and then much better execution because of that.
Absolutely.
So that's, you see why we're really excited about this, because you know, in the lessons that I gave you, you never practice.
Never.
You don't go to the range.
No.
And you were able to implement what we talked about right away on the golf course.
Well, I think I watched a lot of your videos, so I had a lot of confidence in you. I've never taken a lesson in my life. So the moment you set me up and you advised me what to do, I just did it, and I saw results right away.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's the same thing with the thinking part of the golf swing. We need to teach people how to think better on the golf course. And if we can do that, we can lower scores effectively. And maybe you can share with the viewers some of our ideas about how we're going to do this step by step.
Yeah, I mean, we have, well, we're going to be, I'm heading out to the Royal Quebec Golf Club. I'll be in my car tomorrow, on my way out there with all my gear.
And congratulations, 5-year appointment as Director of Golf there.
Yes, sir.
One of the oldest golf courses in North America?
The oldest golf course in North America, in the oldest city in North America, so I'm really jazzed. The history over there is super thick. And so it's a legendary place, and I have a legendary appointment there, and we're gonna be doing some amazing work, and I can't wait to implement that little study that we talked about, how you're gonna be doing something over at the National Golf Club. I intend to do the same thing over at the Royal Quebec Golf Club, and everybody's super stoked about that because it's for the betterment of the game.
Yeah, we're running a randomized control experiment using a control group and an experimental group, similar to the Billy Casper experiment, where we're taking people with their handicaps, and on a difficult par 3 with hazards surrounding the green, we're advising the experimental group to lay up and the control group to do what they would normally do.
Yeah.
And our hypothesis is that we're going to lower the scores by a significant margin, that if you extrapolate that over a round of golf of 18 holes, you could reduce your score by 5 or 6 strokes. Yeah. This will be revolutionary research. And we're going on to write a book as well. You started your part?
Absolutely. I've been chomping at the bit to get a book out for all my students. And, it's just, you write something and you say, oh man, it's way too long, it's way too this. And, I've gone through a couple of editors already. And I just made the decision that that book is going to be just a 50-page manuscript that can be applied to everyone. Just like you, when you came in, you came from another background, and somebody may have a background of a specific teacher, and they've been working on certain mechanics for a while, but these are universal things that the human body is already designed to do and can be applied with everyone, and that'll get their feet wet, and they'll see some improvement right out of the gate. And then combine that with your strategy on the golf course, they're going to see even more improvement. And then the rest can be done through the videos on YouTube and everything else when they want to get down to the nuts and bolts of the thing.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think, you know, between the book, the videos, and the research that we're conducting, we'll be able to revolutionize the way golf is played.
Absolutely.
And I think we're seeing that from the greatest players in the world now. You see the prototype golfer, the Dustin Johnson, the Justin Thomas, the Ricky Fowler. They can hit the ball far. They can have a good short game with their wedges, and they have good decision making on the course.
Yeah, exactly. And we want to bring that to the average player.
Yeah, and that's where they're going to see the most benefit.
Yes. So once they have the decision, easy execution. You can't be thinking about, you can't be in system 2 when you're executing.
No, and I think Phil Mickelson said it best. Prior to winning the 5 majors that he's won, he said had he made different decisions, he probably would have won those majors much earlier. And this is something we can pass on to the amateur golfer, where, you know, for an amateur golfer, it may not be winning a PGA Tour event. It may not even be winning your club event, but it might be beating your best friend at match play. And if you can implement these principles into that match, your weekend's going to be a lot more enjoyable.
It's just like when if you look at teachers like Ernest Jones, you watch his history. He died in 65, I was born in 65, which is really weird, right? And he talks about the handkerchief at the end of the, the penknife at the end of the handkerchief. And his ideas on the golf swing really are very similar to mine. And if he would have had the same access to the data that I've had with Gabrielle Wolf and how we learn motor skills, all the data that you've had access to in the last few years, then they would have come to the same conclusions that I have right now. And I feel like I'm in a very privileged, state to be able to pass this on to all of you. Now, had Phil had access to the same statistics that we're about to come out with, I think he would have had that US Open by now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is going to be great. Look forward to working with everybody, moving ahead. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Neeling.
Very good.
All the best.